Okay, I'm going to get started this morning by just officially welcoming all of you guys. Sawadee Kap, Sawadee Kap, welcome. Welcome to Wat Tung Yu. Good morning to all of you guys. This is what we call our group learning program, where we come together each Sunday and each Wednesday, and I share the teachings of the Buddha with you to be able to help you move your mind to this enlightened mental state. I would like to welcome those of you guys that are here at the temple, and those of you guys joining us online. Welcome to everyone. Today we're going to be exploring chapter 20 of volume 1 of our book series. For this particular program, I use volume 1 of our book series, and I go chapter by chapter each Sunday. And this particular chapter is titled Animal to Human, the Evolution of Our Consciousness. This is where you learn about how the vast majority of us in the human world have been reborn out of the animal world, and you can see the evidence for that for yourself, and then you can understand how getting closer and closer to this enlightened mental state, it's to shed these animalistic instincts, becoming a better and better human being, making wiser and wiser decisions. By the time you get to enlightenment, your mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. You're no longer experiencing any discontent feelings. So all your anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy, even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the enlightened mind. And you need to meditate and train your mind to be able to get there, but you also need other teachings as well. And that's why students will come to the temple or read books or consult with the teacher, because you're going to need various teachings in order to train your mind to get to this enlightened mental state. That by the time you get to enlightenment, you're not even in a bad mood anymore. You're just always in a good mood. You'll notice that your personal and your professional relationships are really blossoming. You don't have aggression, hostility, arguments, disappointment, all these things that you experience in the unenlightened state. By the time you get to this enlightened mental state, that's not there any longer, that you've trained your mind and you've acquired this wisdom to be able to conduct your life with ease. So I'm going to start us off with meditation, and then after we meditate, I'm going to move into this topic to help you guys learn. This isn't where someone will typically start learning when they first get going with the teachings of the Buddha, but it's definitely a topic that is really helpful to understand, because you'll understand more about this human existence and what your real goal is here in this human existence. The way we start off our meditation is we start with these chants that Alan is handing out. Yes, I got your name right again. These chants are in the Pali language. This Pali language is the language that the original teachings of the Buddha are captured in. And we chant these to ease into meditation, and we chant them to ease out of meditation. You'll see the English translations there as well. In the teachings of the Buddha, there are no rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship. There's no prayer, anything like this. So this isn't a prayer. This isn't a rite, a ritual, or ceremony. I do this chant in order to ease the mind into meditation, bringing some awareness to the mind and awareness to the breath, so that you can kind of invigorate the mind and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. If you read the English translations, you see there's a lot of admiration and respect and gratitude for the Buddha. And I suspect that he didn't even create these chants. It was probably created by his students, either during his life or after his death, as a way to honor and respect him for helping them to get from this anger and sadness and frustration and stress and anxiety to this peaceful and joyful mental state where their mind no longer experienced any of those feelings. He didn't want anything from his students. He didn't expect anything from his students. So I suspect they had an enormous amount of respect and gratitude for him, because if you encountered something like that, you'd probably experience the same thing, that you'd have a lot of respect and gratitude for the Buddha as well. So I'm going to ease us into meditation with these chants, and you're welcome to join along in the chanting if you like. Then I'm going to provide some guidance once we get into the meditation, so you can hear how to meditate. We'll actually be meditating together while I'm guiding you. Then there'll be a period of time where we'll just all be meditating together. It'll be quiet. You'll hear the occasional dog bark, or maybe a bird chirp, or a car go by or something like that. But nonetheless, we'll be meditating together as a group. Those of you guys that are here and those of you guys that are online, we can all be meditating together. Then we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting, and that'll kind of ease us out of the meditation. In terms of your body positioning for meditation, if you're sitting on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear. This helps to get your hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. Some people like to put their legs off the mat, which accomplishes the same thing. You'd just like your legs to be lightly crossed. This allows the circulation to flow in the lower body. The hands and the arms, you can put your right hand over your left with your thumbs together and put this in your lap. The Buddha did this, but this practice isn't about everybody doing it exactly the same way. You need to find what's comfortable for you. So if this is comfortable, you could use it, but there's other options as well. You could put your palms on your thighs or your knees. You could put your palms up. Some people just like to rest their hands, in the front of them. And if you're in a chair, people oftentimes would like to put their feet flat on the floor or cross at the ankles. Again, it's not about everybody doing it exactly the same way in terms of the body positioning. You're interested in the body not being luxurious, but you're not interested in being painful either. So if at any point you notice any pain, you can just shift your body position and get to a point where you feel comfortable so that you can then train the mind. Because with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, then the body is comfortable so that you can actively train the mind. The upper body should be erect. By having the sternum up and the shoulders back, this allows you to take some nice deep breaths into the lungs, nice gradual inhales and exhales, and it helps to make the mind attentive and alert during the meditation so that way your mind isn't dull or lethargic. Because if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull and lethargic. But if you were real rigid, your mind might be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be erect so that the mind can be attentive and alert during the meditation. So again, I'm going to ease us into meditation with some chanting. You're welcome to join along. If you're not chanting, you might just decide to close your eyes and kind of start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. This will help you kind of get started with the meditation. And then I'll be back with some guidance after the chanting. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Bhutang Mahakevanhang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakevata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakevato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakeva Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sambuddho Sakato Rokavito Anuttero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled. Just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then when you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to your next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, when you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath. Either the sound of the breath coming into the nose, or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thoughts, label them, judge them, analyze them, or even try to figure out where they're coming from. Whenever you notice that your mind has moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเกวาพุทธังมหาเกวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเกวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามาสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเกวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเกวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารณังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ If you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. So I'd like to once again welcome all of you guys, including the ones who joined us since we started meditating. Welcome to all of you guys, those of you guys that are here and those of you guys online. Welcome to today's class. For those of you guys that this is your first time here at the temple, I'd like to let you know that there's a bathroom in the back of the room. It's the very last door. You're welcome to get up and use that at any time. Feel free to come and go as you please. We even have water over here that's provided by our students that you're welcome to help yourself at any point. There's even bathrooms outside the classroom. If you follow the signs outside the bathroom, it'll loop you around to the main bathrooms in the temple. So feel free to make yourself comfortable as we go forward in our class today. This meditation is called Breathing Mindfulness Meditation. This is a primary form of training that the Buddha used in order to move his mind to enlightenment in terms of meditation. There's other meditations and there's other tools and techniques that you would need in order to get to enlightenment, but this is one of the ones that we practice on a regular basis. Every day, we build up a practice to 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes or more. And sometimes this takes 6 months, a year, even 2 years to build up to this point where you can meditate that type of frequency and that type of duration. But as you do, what you're going to notice is that the contentedness and peacefulness and joy in your mind start to really increase. That you're going to notice that the anger, the sadness, the frustration, the irritation, the annoyance, the guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, the shyness, the resentment, the jealousy, the displeasure is going to slowly dissipate from the mind. You'll notice situations where you were once angry and frustrated and agitated, that now in those same situations you can be peaceful and joyful. That it's not the outside world that's causing you to be angry or frustrated frustrated or sad, oftentimes this is what the mind thinks in the unenlightened state, but it's actually what's going on in your own mind. You can eliminate the causes and conditions that are causing your mind to be angry. And when you eradicate those out of your mind, you'll notice that your mind becomes more peaceful and more joyful. And this is why your relationships become more peaceful as well, because you're not being bitter and harsh or hostile in your relationships. As long as you're trying to control a relationship, or you're being bitter and harsh and hostile, or you're pushing people away, you're going to find that it's challenging to reside with all beings harmoniously. So this meditation is a way to help you be able to accomplish those goals of getting closer and closer to enlightenment. If this was your first time meditating, or even you've been meditating recently, or even you've been meditating for a while, one of the things that is typical when you're first starting to meditate is that you'll have a bombardment of thoughts. That maybe when you were in meditation, it was just like thought, almost like rapid succession. This is completely normal when you're first getting started. Or the other thing that can happen is you might have a thought and you kind of indulge in that thought for a period of time. You kind of follow it, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. Next thing you know, oh, that's right, I'm meditating. What am I doing? Let me get my mind back here. You kind of remember that you were meditating. So when you're first starting to meditate, you don't have the qualities that you're looking to build, which is mindfulness or awareness of mind, concentration, and the ability to easily let things go. So you might have a bombardment of thoughts, or you might have an indulgence of a thought where you follow a thought for a period of time, and then you realize 2 or 3 minutes down the road, oh yeah, that's right, I'm meditating. I need to bring the mind back. So you're not bad at meditation. It's just that the mind is untrained. It's undisciplined. You don't have control of the mind yet. You don't have the wisdom of how to train the mind. That's why people come to the temple and they learn with a teacher, so that you can learn how to train your mind. Just like you clean the body every day, you need to clean your mind every day. And this is going to help you in life to be able to live a more peaceful and joyful life, ultimately getting to enlightenment. So what you're doing in meditation is you're not trying to eliminate your thoughts. That's not what you're doing. Some people think that's the case based on the instruction and the guidance. What you're trying to do is get aware of your thoughts sooner and sooner, so that you know that they're occurring, and you're building that concentration, being able to focus on the breath, a single object. So now in daily life, with that mindfulness, that awareness of mind, that concentration, when you go about your daily life, when anger starting to arise, when frustration or agitation or guilt or shame or fear, loneliness, boredom, any of those discontent feelings are arising, if you're aware that they're starting to arise with your mindfulness, and you can easily let things go, which is what this meditation is helping you do, you can cut those feelings off and let them go. You're not suppressing them, but what you're doing is you're cutting them off and letting them go. You're restraining the mind. You're controlling and disciplining the mind so that you don't have to experience anger. You don't have to experience the sadness and the loneliness and the boredom and all these other discontent feelings that you might experience. You can eradicate that from the mind if you know how to do it, and you can train the mind so you can have more control. So in meditation, we're cutting off anything and everything that arises, but realizing you will have thoughts during meditation. Even when you're enlightened, you're going to have an occasional thought, but there's going to be this long period of quietness and stillness in the mind in between thoughts. And when you do have a thought, you'll notice that thought sooner and sooner. You'll be able to cut it off easier and easier. So even in the enlightened mind, you're still going to have thoughts in your meditation occasionally. But in the unenlightened state, that's where you typically get bombarded with thoughts, or you might be indulging in a thought for a period of time. So in meditation, you're cutting off anything and everything that arises, because you're trying to get the mind used to letting things go. You're trying to discipline it and be able to control it to be able to let things go. So anything that comes up in the mind, you let it go, but realizing that there is going to be occasional thoughts. Then in daily life, when you're out and about in the world, you only cut off the unwholesome thoughts. Anything unwholesome that comes up in the mind, that's what you cut off. If you have a wholesome thought, like maybe you'd like to take your mom to breakfast, or you'd like to go out with your friends after class, or you'd like to have a nice conversation with somebody, there's no harm in that. Go forward. In meditation, you're training your mind in one way, but in daily life, you're training differently. In daily life, you're using your mindfulness and your concentration to be aware of the mind at all times. Practice that mindfulness. And then when you see unwholesome thoughts coming, like anger, frustration, maybe you want to punch someone in the face, maybe you want to lie, maybe you want to steal, maybe you're thinking about having sexual misconduct, maybe you're thinking about taking drugs or intoxicants or things like this. Those are the thoughts that you're cutting off. You cut those things off, and you'll be able to more and more easily cut off all these unwholesome thoughts and these feelings that are coming up that are things that are discontent. You'll get better and better at that the more that you train your mind. When you first get started on this path, your mind's undisciplined and untrained, so it's not so easy to cut these things off in daily life, even when you're aware of them. But as you train in meditation, building up your practice to 2 or 3 times a day for 30 minutes or more, realizing that often takes 6 months, a year, or 2 years to build up to, as you accumulate the benefits over a number of weeks and months, in daily life, you get better and better at noticing when you have an unwholesome thought and being able to cut it off and let it go. And then it doesn't plague your mind. It's essentially like if you were in a boat and you were going from America to the UK, you would like to prevent the water from ever coming into the boat. So that's what you're doing with your meditation and with your daily life, is that whenever you see this unwholesome thought arising, you cut it off and let it go so it doesn't plague the mind. Because once the water gets in the boat, you have a real problem to deal with. You got to get this water out of the boat. But if you can prevent this water from ever coming into the boat, you can sail from America over to the UK. Right? So the same thing is true, is if you can prevent these unwholesome thoughts from arising and you can cut them off and let them go, then more and more the mind will get disciplined and trained that it won't have these unwholesome thoughts. Your mind will be purified. You'll have eradicated the pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind. There's 10 individual pollutions that he discovered. We call these the 10 fetters. A fetter is a shackle and a chain or a ball that keeps a prisoner trapped in a certain area. So the 10 fetters, or the 10 pollutions, or 10 taints, or the 10 defilements are the things that are keeping the mind trapped in this unenlightened state, where on this continuous cycle over and over and over and over again, you keep experiencing agitation, irritation, annoyance, guilt or shame or fear or boredom or loneliness or some other discontent feeling. It's only a matter of time before you experience those things. But when you understand what these 10 pollutions are and you eradicate them from the mind through the training and the tools and the techniques that the Buddha gives you, you can get to the point where your mind's always peaceful and joyful because those pollutions aren't in there anymore plaguing the mind. So this meditation is something that we do on a regular, consistent basis, and it helps you build the qualities that you need to then practice in daily life. And there's an entire path to enlightenment that the Buddha taught called the Eightfold Path, which is the core central teaching where all the other teachings plug into it. And with the teachings of the Buddha, you never believe any of his teachings. You learn them, you investigate them, you examine them, and then you reflect on them to independently verify that his teachings are true. And then you practice his teachings. And as you're practicing his teachings, it's transforming your mind, it's eradicating these pollutions, and you're getting to the point where you see the peacefulness and joy coming into the mind more and more readily. Where there were situations that once where you experienced anger and frustration, you'll have those same situations occurring in your life, and you won't be angry, you won't be frustrated, and you'll know it's these teachings that are leading you there. But you can't get there through belief. So nothing in the teachings of the Buddha is to be believed. This practice isn't about believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. Instead, you're learning now, you're reflecting now, and you're practicing now. So you see the results now in this life. So this topic that I'm going to be sharing with you today, which is called Animal to Human, the evolution of our consciousness, you're going to be learning about things like the 5 realms of existence. You're going to be learning a little bit about the cycle of rebirth. I introduce you to that. But even something like this, you don't believe these teachings. The reason why the Buddha shared the cycle of rebirth is because this is true reality. This is what's truly happening. You may not have the wisdom right now to independently verify that the cycle of rebirth is true and that these 5 realms are true. But the more you learn and investigate the teachings, you can independently verify that these things are true. And the reason why he's sharing these natural laws with you and helping you understand that these things are true is that as you're lifting the pollution out of your mind using his core central teachings of the Eightfold Path, you might start having contact with beings in these various realms that he taught. He taught the hell realm, the animal realm, the afflicted spirit realm, the human realm, and the heavenly realm. And these realms aren't in far distant places, like really far away from you. All these beings are here in the same time and space as us. So you might end up having contact with beings from the hell realm or the afflicted spirit realm or the heavenly realm that you can't see, but you can hear their voices and they're communicating with you. if this occurred and you didn't understand the cycle of rebirth, your mind could be really shaken up. So the Buddha is providing you guidance of how to train your mind to be stable and steady. And if you didn't understand the world around you and what was truly happening, your mind can easily be shaken up. So he taught you this not only because you can potentially have contact with beings from these different realms, but also as you're lifting pollution out of your mind, you might end up observing your past lives at some point. You might have some vivid memories at some point during your life about this graphic murder or a rape or some other kind of problem or some other situation that you have these vivid memories of them, and they're maybe plaguing your mind. And if you don't realize that those are from your past lives and you can let them go and you can train your mind to let go, you might be really shaken up with these vivid memories coming back to you. So by understanding the cycle of rebirth, that you've been multiple beings in the past and that you might potentially have communication with these beings in the various realms, it can help you to stabilize your mind, where you understand that all those things are in the past and that you don't need to hold on to these memories, and that these beings that are communicating with you, you don't need to be shaken up by them, that they're not going to hurt you. So the teachings that I'm going to share with you today, they're in order to help you accomplish these goals, where you can understand the world around you in these 5 realms, and that if you start observing past lives, you'll understand what it's coming from. But more specifically, what I'm going to be sharing with you related to the cycle of rebirth is I'm going to be helping you see how the vast majority of human beings, that we've been reborn out of the animal realm. And because of that, when we are in the animal existences, we've had countless animal existences, and our mind was conditioned very much to function like an animal. And now when we're in the human realm, we have a human consciousness, but our mind is very much functioning like an animal in the unenlightened state. By the time you get to enlightenment, you're functioning as a human being. You're functioning as a very wise human being. But in the meantime, there's certain animalistic instincts that we have in the human existence with the human consciousness, that if you understand what those are, and you understand your goal is to move to this better and better human being, when you identify these animalistic instincts that you're having, you can purge those, and you can choose to no longer have those. And you can become this better and better human being through cultivating wisdom. So this topic that I'm going to share with you, I'm going to help you and walk you through so that you can see these correlations. And there are things that you may not have been looking at in the world around you right now. As we go, I'm going to open up to questions at different times. For those of you guys here at the temple, if you guys have questions, we have microphones in this white bowl in front of the camera. If you would like to get a microphone, you press the gray button on the front. The light comes on. It only takes about a second for the mic to engage, and you just hold it up to your chin. That way we can hear you here at the temple, and the people online will be able to hear you as well. We have a bunch of people joining us online. And then after you're done, if you could just turn off the microphone and then just keep it with you, because if there's someone around you that also has a question, you can just share the microphone with them. For those of you guys that are online, if you guys have questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, and I'll see that and I'll be able to answer your question. And if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions or follow-up questions directly. So I'm going to switch over to some visual aids here so the folks online can see what it is that I'm displaying here at the temple. Okay. And now just to share with you guys the problems in the unenlightened mind. This is going to be a little bit of a recap or a refresher for some of the people that have been learning with me. For those of you guys that haven't been learning with me, this will be the first time you'll kind of hear some of the things that the Buddha is teaching in terms of problems in the unenlightened mind. Remember, there's 10 individual pollutions or 10 individual fetters. These are the 10 pollutions that you're working to eradicate on the path to enlightenment. But all of those bubble up to what we call the 3 poisons, or the 3 unwholesome roots, or the 3 fires. These 3 unwholesome roots, or these 3 poisons, they're plaguing the unenlightened mind, and one is motivated to make decisions through these 3 poisons, or these 3 unwholesome roots in the unenlightened state. And animals are also having these 3 pollutions as well. We refer to that as craving, anger, and ignorance. Some people refer to it as greed, hatred, and delusion. What the craving is this is the mind's longing, yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection. chasing after selfish desires, thinking that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide you some kind of lasting satisfaction. The mind is craving permanence, wanting things to be a certain way in the world. And when you get things the way that you want, based in your cravings, you will get pleasant feelings. You will get happy, excited, elated, thrilled, exhilarated, euphoria, because you're getting what you want. You're getting the objects of your affection. You're getting something to happen that you want. Maybe you're getting a new pair of shoes, a new computer, a new phone, a new friend. Maybe your mom calls you today. Maybe your bank account is a certain balance. You're getting what you want, so you get happy and you get excited. But then, if you don't get what you want, your mind moves to the sadness, the anger, the frustration, the irritation, the annoyance. So the mind is experiencing what's called discontentedness, pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant, like uncomfortable or dissatisfied. And these feelings are what's called conditioned feelings, that you're forming this inner feeling based on some condition. So the mind is longing, yearning, wanting something to occur. So for example, if you wake up in the morning and you see it's sunny outside and you really like the sun, you'll get excited. You'll get happy. Yay, it's sunny outside. I can go hiking. Yes, this is going to be so fun. I'm going to go outside and spend all this time with my friends. Oh, it's going to be great. So you might form these happy feelings based on the condition of the sun. But now you go take a shower and you come out and you see it's raining. And now you're sad, or you're angry, or you're frustrated, or you're agitated. Because you formed the happiness based on a condition of the sun, this is a conditional pleasant feeling. That feeling is not permanent, because the condition in which you form the feeling based on is not permanent. It's impermanent. The sun is temporary. So that means your happiness is temporary. So if you form your feelings based on some condition like the sun, then that means your happiness is not permanent. And it's only a matter of time before your mind becomes sad or angry or frustrated. The same thing is happening if you have a certain bank account balance and you get happy when your bank gets to that certain balance. And now you're happy or excited because of that. And that's the condition. The mind had a craving, a desire, a longing, a yearning, wanting the bank account balance to be a certain level. And then when it got to that level, you got happy. But then when the bank account balance dropped, because that condition of the bank account balance being that level is not permanent. And then when it dropped, your mind became sad or angry or frustrated or irritated, or you felt some other discontent feeling. And this is happening with boyfriends and girlfriends. When you come together with a boyfriend or girlfriend, when you first get together, you might be happy, excited, elated because someone's showing you affection and you feel so great that you've got this person in your life. Maybe you're having intimate contact. Maybe you're going to dinner and having great conversations, going to the park. But then at some point you guys break up and the relationship's over. With the mind craving this relationship to be permanent. The mind is longing, yearning, craving this relationship to be permanent, but yet it is impermanent. And when the unenlightened mind is experiencing this impermanence, it doesn't understand it. It doesn't realize that everything around you is impermanent. And now because you are craving permanence and you formed your inner feeling of happiness based on this relationship, that's the condition. Now when that condition changes and now you're no longer together, the unenlightened mind loses its happiness. It's angry, it's frustrated, it's lonely, it's bored. You're feeling like you miss this person perhaps. This is because of the mind's craving, desire, attachment. And then what will typically happen when you don't get your cravings fulfilled is there's this anger that arises in the mind, this bitterness, this hostility, this aggression, this hostility, almost like an animal. You're growling at this person. And what we will typically do in the unenlightened state is we will push this person away or we'll push the situation away. Because when the anger is arising, those feelings are very painful for you and you're associating those painful feelings with something external. You're not realizing that it's craving. It's your own mind's craving that's causing that anger. But the mind in the unenlightened state with its lack of wisdom thinks that the problem is external. So it thinks that if I push this person away out of my life or I push this situation away, that will solve the problem. But when you do that, when you push people away, it doesn't solve your problem. That is just a matter of time before you get irritated and annoyed or agitated agitated about something else. It's just a matter of time. So when you push people away with aversion, or you push the situation away, you haven't solved the true problem. The true problem is the craving inside the mind. So when you push someone away, you're just ending a relationship that could have potentially otherwise been a very harmonious relationship. Or the second thing that you'll do when you falsely attribute those painful feelings to something external is you'll become bitter, harsh, and hostile through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. This is the growling and the roaring that the unenlightened mind does, much like an animal, and try to fear this person into doing things your way based on the hostility and the bitterness. And you might feel justified in your anger. You might be blaming the other person for making you angry, when in reality, it was your own craving that was causing the anger. Or the third thing that the unenlightened mind will do when it falsely understands the problem is that it thinks that the problem is external. So you might put your expectations on people, and you might try to control people to do things your way, because the mind thinks if you can just get your cravings fulfilled, everything will be perfect. If you can just get what you want, then everything will be perfect. So the mind thinks if it puts its expectations on people and you control people to do things your way, you're going to get those pleasant feelings. But you don't realize that those feelings are only temporary, and you can't get 8 billion people in the world to do things your way. It's not possible. Your parents aren't going to do things your way. Your brothers and sisters, your life partners, your children, your coworkers, your neighbors, they're not going to do things your way. They've had different experiences in life, so they're going to do things differently. So as long as you're putting your expectations on people, they're going to feel pressured, and they might choose to leave out of your life. So with this going on, where the mind misunderstands the problem, you'll push people away. You'll be bitter, harsh, and hostile. They might choose to leave out of your life. Or you'll put your expectations on people, and they'll choose to leave out of your life. And now you can't live harmoniously with all people, because the mind doesn't understand the real problem is inside itself. It's inside the own mind. And you can understand this problem more closely and then actually solve it. But as long as you misunderstand the problem and you think it's something external, you won't be able to solve the problem, because you're looking in the wrong place. You're pushing people away, being bitter, harsh, and hostile, and putting your expectations. And none of that is going to fix the craving, desire, attachment within your own mind. And where this is all coming from is this third poison, or this third unwholesome root, or this third fire. It's called ignorance or delusion, or some people refer to it as confusion or misunderstanding or misperception. This is the one's wrong views of reality, of what truly is happening in the world. I like to refer to this as the unknowing of true reality, because this word ignorance is kind of like a derogatory word nowadays. I wouldn't refer to you or anybody else as ignorant. This would be unwise. But the unknowing of true reality, the unenlightened mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. It firmly believes that other people are the problem. It firmly believes that something external is causing you to feel these certain feelings that you're having, when in reality, it's inside your own mind. But the unenlightened mind just doesn't understand that, particularly because it has ego in there, this arrogance, this boastfulness, this pride, thinking that you're so right and everybody else is so wrong. So the mind's ego is going to trick you into thinking that everyone else is the problem and you're perfect, right? But when you see true reality, that your mind is actually causing these feelings itself, then you can solve the real problem if you understand what the real solution is. You can cultivate wisdom to be able to solve the problem. So this ignorance, or this unknowing of true reality, the way that you fix it is you cultivate wisdom about the natural laws around you. So this is why with the teachings of the Buddha, you don't believe anything. You're learning his teachings, you're reflecting on them to independently verify them, and you're practicing so that you can get to wisdom and you can see true reality of what's really happening in the unenlightened mind. Because when you can see the problem and the Buddha gives you the solutions to that problem, when you apply the solution, you can get a real result. You can get a real fix. But as long as you don't understand the problem and you don't have the wisdom of the solution, you can't apply that and you can't fix it. So you'll just stay stuck in this cycle of continuous problems over and over and over again. So if you've had the same exact problems happening in your life over and over again, where you have a boyfriend or girlfriend and it's a broken relationship and it keeps happening over and over and over again? This is just because the mind lacks wisdom of how to have harmonious relationships. And typically we're blaming other people for the problems that we're experiencing. But when you can set all that aside and realize that the mind needs wisdom, and you start cultivating that wisdom through learning, reflecting, and practicing, and you get the solutions to solve the problem, now you can see real results in your mind. But as long as the mind's ego is in there thinking that you're so right and everybody else is wrong, you wouldn't take the time to reach out and actually get help from somebody that can actually help you and show you what's really going on in your mind so that you can actually solve the problem. So this craving, anger, and ignorance are masking the mind's true ability to experience this brightness and radiance. It's hindering the mind from being able to experience harmonious relationships. It's keeping the mind stuck in this continuous cycle of discontent feelings, of anger and sadness, frustration, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, shyness, boredom, loneliness, resentfulness, all this displeasure. The mind's just going to keep experiencing that over and over and over again because it's stuck, because it lacks wisdom. And that's why you need help from a teacher and resources and guidance to be able to understand this. But then you don't believe what we say, you learn it, reflect on it, and practice it. So these cravings, anger, and ignorance, it's not only plaguing the unenlightened mind of human beings, but it's also plaguing animals, and it's plaguing other beings in the cycle of rebirth too. That I'm about to introduce you to the 5 realms of existence. All the beings in the cycle of rebirth are experiencing the same craving, anger, and ignorance. And you can see from the examples that I'm providing you that you can relate this to your life, and you can see that your mind has these same exact issues. And you don't need to feel bad. You don't need to feel guilty. You don't need to feel shameful. Every single being that's ever been born has these exact same 3 poisons. If you haven't learned how to eradicate these from the mind, your mind's going to have these. Every single person that's ever been born has craving, anger, and ignorance in their mind, and they're experiencing this unenlightened mental state. But what this life is about is learning about these and then applying the solutions to eradicate them so that you can experience the peace and joy and a more fulfilling and more satisfying life where you can have rewarding relationships and satisfying relationships. So not only is this craving, anger, and ignorance plaguing the mind, but there's this ego that's in there that I started to mention just a little bit. There's 2 individual pollutions or 2 individual fetters that the Buddha taught that we refer to as the ego. During the lifetime of the Buddha, the word ego didn't exist. So he used this personal existence view and conceit to describe what we're calling the ego. It's actually good to understand it as 2 separate things because the pollution of mind and the symptoms that you're going to experience are different between these 2 pollutions. And therefore, the remedies and the solutions are different too. I taught this back in chapter 16 of this program and of this book series, the volume 1. You can see in chapter 16 where I taught about personal existence view and ego. Personal existence view is where the mind clings to this body or this mind, thinking that this is who you are. It clings to the self-image or the self-identity. And now if you spill something on your clothing, you might get embarrassed because you're not being perceived in the world the way you want to be perceived. Or if you get a gray hair or a pimple or a wrinkle, or you start losing your hair, or you get a little bit of fat here and there. If you're clinging to this body, thinking that this is who you are, when this body starts changing and you're not being perceived in the world the way you want to be perceived, you'll get frustrated or agitated or annoyed or some other discontent feeling. Or say somebody says something to you that's complimentary about your physical appearance, then you'll get pleasant feelings, happy, excited, elated. But then if somebody says something degrading or disparaging about how you look, people will oftentimes get angry or frustrated or agitated because somebody's complimenting you in one case, and your mind gets pleasant feelings, but in another case, they're degrading you and disparaging this physical body and the way this body looks. And when you cling with your mind to this body, thinking that this is who you are, when they're being degrading and disparaging, you'll get angry and frustrated. And you can't control what other people say and what other people do. It's not possible for you to control them. All you can do is control your own mind. So if you cling to this body and think that this is who you are, when somebody says something complimentary, you'll get happy, you'll get excited. But when somebody says something degrading and disparaging, you'll get sad and frustrated and feel miserable about something that they're saying about this body, because you're not being perceived in the world in the way you want to be perceived. And then the same thing is happening with the self-identity in the mind, that there might be a certain culture, a certain ethnicity, a certain nationality, a certain sexual orientation, or maybe your job or occupation. You're clinging to this in the mind perhaps as your self-identity, thinking that this is who you are. And now if somebody says something complimentary about that, then you get pleasant feelings. But if they say something degrading or disparaging, you might get these painful feelings, this anger and this frustration. And again, you can't control what people say. You could be at a restaurant having dinner, and 2 tables over, you might overhear a conversation of somebody saying something degrading and disparaging about the country that you come from. All Americans are this way, or all Chinese people are this way, or all British people are this way, or all Aussies are this way. You could hear all different kinds of unwise things that they're saying. And while I wouldn't say those things, and you might not say those things, there are people in the world that are going to say those things that are very unwise to say. And you're going to hear those things. And if you're clinging to your mind, this self-identity, thinking that this is who you are, either your culture, your ethnicity, your nationality, your sexual orientation, your job or occupation, all police officers are this, or all lawyers are that, all politicians are this, and you hear people talking about that, and you think that that's who you are. I am a politician. I am a police officer. Now, when they're talking like that, you're identifying with that, and now you're going to feel they're talking about you, and you're going to get angry. You're going to get frustrated, and you might become unskillful. You might try to beat this person up, right? You might, do some really unwise things that you end up in jail, or you might end up harmed, or something like that. This is part of the ego. We call it personal existence view. This is part of the pollutions in the mind. And then there's something called conceit, which is arrogance or pride or boastfulness. This is where you're judging other people and putting yourself above people or putting yourself below people. And now when you're around people that you feel you're above, you might talk down to them. And when you put yourself below people, you might talk up to people, and you might feel shaken up in those situations. These are coming from the animal existences. When we were animals, we needed personal existence view. We needed to really have a protection of this body. We needed to go out into the world as a deer in a field, and we needed to be very on guard. Is there any predators around that are going to attack us? And if so, we need to run in fear because this animal, this predator is going to attack us. And we needed this conceit when we were in the animal realm. We needed to know who was above us and who was below us, because when we were a pack of wolves, there was an alpha female and there was an alpha male who were breeding and mating, and they were teaching us how to hunt. They were teaching us how to survive. If we didn't know who the alpha male and alpha female were in our wolf pack, we wouldn't survive because we wouldn't have learned the skills that we needed to learn. And when we were a herd of elephants, we needed to know who's the matriarch of our herd, because she's going to show us the migration paths. She's going to show us the watering holes. She's going to show us where to eat and what foods to eat. So we needed to know who's the matriarch of our herd of elephants. So we needed to have this pecking order in the animal realm. But we don't need that in the human realm. When we have a pecking order and your mind has this pecking order of who's above you and who's below you, you'll go into the world and be arrogant and prideful and boastful, and you'll talk down to people. And then there's other situations where you'll look up to people with such admiration that you'll be shaken up. Maybe your boss, or maybe a certain celebrity, or maybe if you come in contact with the president of your country or something like this, or a vice president of your company. And now it's going to hinder you from being successful in life, because as you go around this person, if you're shaken up and you don't have clarity of thought, you can't be successful in communicating to people and advancing in your career. So having this pecking order as you're going around with your ego, it's going to shake you up in your career and in your personal relationships. And if you're talking down to people with arrogance and pride, they're going to push you aside. They're going to reject you because they think of you as having arrogance and boastfulness, and you're trying to put yourself above them, and people aren't going to stand for that. They're not going to be interested in hanging around you when you're arrogant and boastful and prideful towards others. But when you can look at yourself as being equal, and everybody's equal, and we're all the same, and nobody's above us and nobody's below us. We might perform different roles in the world. There might be a president of a country, and there might be someone who collects waste and garbage from the street. But these people aren't higher and lower, even though other people might think that way, that you have one person that's high and one person that's low. It's important for your mind to think of everybody as equal, that they're performing different roles in society. They're doing different things. But just like we like to have a leader of our country that's making wise decisions, we also like to have clean streets too. We like to have people who are collecting garbage from the streets. This is important, that we have clean streets in the world. And there's not one job that's more important than the other. They're all equal. It's just that the mind, with its conceit, having been conditioned this way from our previous animal existences, will think of a pecking order, and we will look around the world and create this pecking order in our mind, thinking that there's people above us and below us. And this is just the human mind holding on to conditioning from our animal existences. But now that we're in the human realm, this will cause us problems, and we need to learn how to shed this ego. We need to learn how to shed this personal existence view and this conceit, where we're no longer looking down on people and looking up to people. So when you understand the problem that the ego is causing, and then you understand the tools and techniques of how to eliminate it, as you are eliminating it from the mind, you'll find that your relationships are more harmonious, both personally and professionally, because you can relate to all beings equally. You don't put yourself above or below people. So this ego is causing the mind to function in certain unwise ways that you can transform and eliminate and eradicate to the point where you can live harmoniously with all beings. And that's what you would need to do in order to get to this peaceful and joyful mental state. Because as long as you're walking around being judgmental of others, not only are you going to judge others, you're going to judge yourself too. You're going to have this inner dialogue in the mind where you're degrading yourself and you're looking down on yourself and you're beating yourself up. By the time you get to enlightenment, you can eliminate this negative self-talk where you're no longer degrading yourself. But as long as you're judging others, you're going to tend to judge yourself too, and you're going to look down on yourself. And you can eradicate that when you understand these aspects of the mind, these unwholesome qualities, and then you get the tools and techniques to actually eliminate them. So your current life in your previous lives have conditioned the mind in this way, with this craving, anger, and ignorance, and this ego is in there. The mind is holding on to this conditioning. What we mean by conditioning is that you've had certain experiences over countless lifetimes that have been adopted in the mind and conditioned the mind to think a certain way, and now you're functioning today in your current life based on this conditioning of the mind. I'll give you a simple example. Let's just say one day you were walking down the street and some guy in a green jacket beat you up and cause all these injuries to you. Well, your mind might take on the conditioning that anybody in a green jacket is going to cause me harm, and now you walk around the world being fearful of anybody who's wearing a green jacket. This is called conditioning of the mind. This is what happens with racism and sexism and different things. People's mind holds on to this conditioning. They might have had a negative experience at one time, and now they associate that negative experience with everybody that they interact with. So over the course of multiple lives, we've had different experiences where our mind gets conditioned to believe certain things and to think certain things, to form certain assumptions, to hold on to certain perceptions. And these are misperceptions that the mind's holding on to. And the mind thinks in a certain way, and the mind is polluted with certain pollutions. And what the Buddha is teaching you on this path is to uproot all of this and clean out the mind and purify the mind. But as long as the mind is experiencing this pollution of mind, it's trapped in this unenlightened state. It's continuing to hold on to these false beliefs, these misperceptions. In the path to enlightenment, you're not eliminating false beliefs by bringing in new beliefs. That's not what you're doing. What you're doing is you're bringing in wisdom by learning, reflecting, and practicing the teachings and seeing true reality. And by bringing in this wisdom, where you see these false beliefs no longer serve you and they're causing you difficulties and hindering you, you get rid of all those false beliefs and you bring in the wisdom. One of the very first false beliefs that you need to eliminate on the path to enlightenment is you need to eliminate the belief that other people are causing you to be angry. And you learn this through the Four Noble Truths. This is the very first teaching that I typically introduce students to when they first start learning with me. This is a very beginning teaching where you learn 4 simple statements of what the problem is in the unenlightened mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. And this craving, desire, attachment is what you learn is causing the mind to be angry and frustrated and agitated. And what we do in the unenlightened state before understanding the Four Noble Truths is we walk around firmly believing that other people are causing us to be angry. And we hold on to that belief. We hold on to that conditioning of mind. We think everyone else is the problem. And again, the ego is in there telling us that we're so great and we're so perfect and everybody else is the problem. But when you can lower down the ego and you can choose to come get help, then an individual can help you see this craving, anger, and ignorance and all the other issues that the Buddha discovered, helping you with the tools and techniques to eradicate this. But as long as an individual isn't doing that, the mind stays conditioned based on your current experiences in this life and your experiences in your past lives. The mind accumulates all this pollution and accumulates all this conditioning to the point where the mind can be very polluted and experiences this lack of ability to experience the peace and the joy and harmonious relationships. So the mind is going to continue to experience this continuous problems in this life over and over and over and over and over and over again because it lacks wisdom. And then because it lacks wisdom and it doesn't get to enlightenment in this life, then there's going to be a rebirth that occurs to continue this cycle over and over and over again, because the mind hasn't learned what it needs to learn in this life. So therefore it needs to keep coming back and learning over and over and over and over again and attempting to learn. That's what the goal of this life is. So this cycle of rebirth that is constantly occurring, you can see it in your own life through the problems that are constantly happening over and over and over and again. Where you lack wisdom, you're going to see that same problem occurring over and over and over again. But when you gain wisdom, you can escape and overcome that obstacle. That wherever you've had challenges in your life, if that challenge kept repeating over and over and over again, the way that you solved it is you gained wisdom. And when you gained wisdom, you overcame that challenge. And now whenever that challenge arises, you have the answer and you can handle it with ease. Where in the past, when you didn't have the wisdom, you might have struggled or you might have had difficulties in that situation. So this constant cycle of rebirth is occurring whether you're aware of it or not. And the cause that's causing it is this craving, this longing, this yearning. This is the fuel that sends the spark to create the next life. Just like there's a fire burning with logs, if there's logs on this fire, then it's going to send off sparks. And then the wind is going to carry this spark and it's going to land, and then it's going to create a new fire. It's a completely new fire, but it's from the spark of the old fire because the old fire has fuel. But if you get rid of all the fuel, you get rid of all the logs, then there's no spark. So that means there's no new fire. So the craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, this is the fire that's sending off sparks. So at the end of this life, if you have craving, desire, attachment in your mind, you would have been angry and frustrated your entire life at different times. But then that's the cause and condition that's sending off the spark to then create the new mind and the new life. But you can extinguish these fires. You can put them out with the tools and the techniques that the Buddha shares. And you can see that that's occurring because the mind's becoming more peaceful and more joyful. And as you put out these fires, the mind becomes cool, becomes at ease. And you can see that occurring in all your relationships. Then not only have you eliminated discontentedness in this life, but you've eliminated the causes and conditions that lead to rebirth. So you won't experience continuous birth. Because if you experience birth, you're going to experience sickness, aging, and death, and discontentedness, continuous anger and frustration. Because of birth, there's going to be sickness, aging, and death. You can't avoid that. That is the impermanent nature of this physical body. As long as this body is born into the world, it's going to experience sickness, aging, and death. And you're going to experience discontentedness as well, like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. But if you can eliminate birth, then you can eliminate the causes and conditions that lead to sickness, aging, and death, and discontentedness. The cause and condition that's leading to birth is craving, desire, attachment. The causes and conditions that are leading to discontentedness is craving, desire, attachment. So if you can eliminate craving, desire, attachment, you'll see the condition of your mind gradually improving, where the discontentedness is diminishing more and more and more. And when you fully eliminate your discontentedness, and you will see that it's been 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and you've eliminated this discontentedness, you're no longer getting angry and frustrated, you'll know that your mind is peaceful and joyful. You're not experiencing this continuous discontentedness, and therefore you'll know that you're not experiencing rebirth either. So let me pause here and see what questions you guys might have about what I've shared so far. Then I'm going to share with you the 5 realms of existence to help you guys understand what these 5 realms are and what beings experience in these different realms. Again, if you guys would like to ask questions here, we've got microphones here in the white bowl. You can just turn it on with the gray button and ask your question. And for those of you guys online, you can ask questions by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand electronically in Zoom and ask any questions that you like.
Is there a difference in the animal kingdom? I mean, like, from all the different animals, the mind is different, or is the same in any kind of animal?
Each animal's mind has craving, anger, and ignorance. So from that aspect, it's the same. But the amount of that craving, anger, and ignorance is different from each animal and each being. So for example, say like a lion, right? A lion has a lot of craving, has a lot of anger, fierceness, right? You come in my territory, I'm going to kill you, right? And then this is all coming from the ignorance or the unknowing of true reality. A turtle, for example, or a rabbit doesn't have that same level of craving, that same level of anger, and the same level of ignorance. You see a rabbit, when you come into its territory, it runs. Right? It's like, okay, you would like to be there. I'm gone. I'm out of here. The rabbit's not going to kill you because you came into his territory. So they all have craving, anger, and ignorance. They all have ego that we're talking about here, but the level and amount of it is different from one being to the next. And this is why it requires countless rebirths in the animal realm to eventually get to a human rebirth, because you need to ultimately end up in a animal birth that is helping you with a better quality of mind. So being in a lion, for example, it's very challenging for that lion to get right into the human realm because it's doing so much killing. It's got so much anger. But being reborn as a lion, a snake, a lizard, a turtle, a rabbit, now maybe an elephant, these beings tend to be more loving and more compassionate. They don't have as much anger. They're much more likely to be reborn into the human realm versus an animal like a snake or a lion or something like that.
And I have another question. What happens when a species is extinction?
What happens when it goes extinct?
Yeah.
It's just extinct. So those beings that are, if you look at the animal realm has been shrinking for so many years. Scientists tell us that the animals that exist today, it's only 1% of what once existed. So when we look around the world, we see lots of animals here, but that's only 1% of what once existed. So 99% of the animals that once existed, scientists say, are extinct. So the animal realm has significantly shrunk, and then those beings need to be reborn somewhere. So they're going to be reborn either in hell, and back into the animal realm, into the afflicted spirit realm, into the human realm, or into the heavenly realm. So this is why we see the human realm expanding, because the animal realm is shrinking. So we're seeing more come up into the human realm. And I'm going to explain that to you here in a moment. But as beings are dying, then they're going to need to be reborn somewhere else if they're not yet enlightened. And in the animal realm, you can't get to enlightenment. So they're going to need to be reborn somewhere. Mm-hmm.
I remember reading in the volume 1 of this book series that you mentioned that we're keeping the animals trapped in this realm out of the animal farming that we are doing. And well, I also remember reading somewhere else that indeed the biomass, which is more abundant right now in the world, is like these chickens, cows, pigs that we are raising just for food. Like, it's just unimaginable, like the amount of animals that have to be produced and killed every day in order to satisfy the demand that we have for those products. Can you tell us more about that? How is that trapping having place?
Sure. From my understanding, there's about, just in the U.S. alone, from what I remember, I think there's 25 million animals that are killed every day in order to provide food to the people in America, and that's just one country. And the population's about 380 million, I think it is, where we have much more people than that around the world. So there's a significant amount of animals that are being killed every single day. And as we're doing that, it's causing harm to our environment because we're having to grow these animals in order to supply the food for human beings. Whereas if more and more of us decided to move to a plant-based food supply, we can provide much more food in a smaller or in the same amount of space. We can provide much more food with plants. So like 1 acre of land can grow something like 50,000 kilograms of broccoli versus that 1 acre of land can only grow like 100 or 200 kilograms of meat. And there's so much more water and so much more resources that need to go into that 100 or 200 kilograms of meat versus this 50,000 kilograms of broccoli, for example. So the problem with the environment that we have in terms of the weather and things like this can be drastically improved, but also the famine in the world where people don't have food and there's lack of food in certain places in the world, this can be solved as well. So as long as we keep killing animals, we're precipitating the problem. This is the unwholesome results of our decisions, that we're making unwise decisions as human beings, so we experience these unwholesome results. And as long as we keep doing that, we're going to keep experiencing these problems over and over and over again. But we can choose to do something differently if we like, and then we'll see different results in the world.
Thank you, teacher. I was also wondering if somehow we're forcing these animals to be trapped in this animal realm because of overbreeding them, because there are just way too many of them.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. Sorry, I didn't answer that part of your question, is that by us being reliant on animal products in order to sustain our life, we're attached to the animals. We're craving, we're having desire, we're longing, yearning, thinking that we need to keep this other being in this position in order to provide us with our selfish needs, when in reality, everything that we need to sustain our life can be found through plants and through the natural world, which aren't living beings. And we can now harvest a tree, or we can harvest a broccoli, or we can harvest some other product by trapping this being like a slave in this life of servitude. Now we're dependent on this, and now we're going to keep breeding them and breeding them and breeding them, and there's going to be countless beings that are going through a certain amount of suffering in order to provide us these things, where we can disconnect our life from the animal world, no longer using things like leather and eggs and cheeses and things like this. But it's going to take all of humanity to gradually move to that. But as we do, we're going to see more and more improvement to our physical health. Human beings will experience better, improved physical health. We'll experience improved mental health. We'll experience improvement to our environment and our climate and those kinds of things, because we're making wise decisions about not causing harm to other beings, and that's going to produce wholesome results for us. if there was some being on this planet that was more superior than us, like say there was some giants that were 30 feet tall, and we aren't the dominant creature in this world. And let's just say this dominant creature of giants were keeping us trapped in a life of servitude, and we were in cages, and they were constantly shaving our hair in order to provide them some benefit. Maybe they're going inside of a woman and taking her eggs out and eating those. Maybe they're doing other things with us in order to use our products in order to sustain their life. We wouldn't stand for it. We would all revolt. We would get together. We would break out of these cages, and we would try to take over these giant creatures if we could, because we wouldn't stand for another being keeping us trapped in a life of servitude. But human beings have come to the point where we look at animals in some cases as a lesser being, and we think that we can keep them trapped in this life of servitude to serve us. And it's unfortunate that we've done that, but we've all been there at some point in time, perhaps thinking in that way. But when you start to come to realize that all beings need to make their way through this cycle of rebirth, and all beings can be treated equally, and we don't need to cause this harm to animals just because they're animals. Now we can choose to practice loving kindness, which is genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And we can practice compassion, which is concern for the misfortune of others. And we can make different choices about how we choose to sustain our life using natural products that are renewable and that aren't causing harm through killing of a living being. And then we will experience the better improved results because of that. Our body will be healthier, our mind will be healthier, our environment will be healthier. We won't see diseases like COVID coming from the animal world into the human world. We won't see things like HIV that came into the human world from the animal world, mad cow disease, what do they call it? Swine flu, bird flu, all these different viruses and diseases. They're bridging their way from animals over to humans because we're having such close contact with animals. And if we separated that and we just let animals be animals in the forest and frolic around in the forest like animals should be doing, and we're not dependent on them for sustaining our life, then we wouldn't come in close contact with them, and we wouldn't see all these diseases and viruses coming into the human world and affecting us in such a significant way. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for teaching this morning. When you're speaking conditioning of the mind and how that perhaps comes from a previous existence from the animal realms and the hierarchical pecking order that you described, I can feel that as well in this life, the conditioning of the mind or the beliefs that are instilled in us or in me from the family, from the nuclear family, and what goes on there. Is there any value in really exploring that? How far do we investigate that? How far could I look at those beliefs? Because messages or those beliefs that are instilled in a toddler seem to persist. I mean, you could say something to me now, and I, as an adult, will rationally think about it and go, I believe it or I don't. But if you had said the same thing to me when I was, 3 years old, I could still believe it years later. How far does someone explore those things?
So by the time you are making your way on this journey to enlightenment, you're being taught to not believe anything at all. Belief is part of the problem, a big problem that the unenlightened mind has, because it doesn't know what's true or false. It's just believing it. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you're not going to have any beliefs whatsoever. You're going to know the truth of what's truly occurring in the world around you and how this mind functions. Right now, there are certain beliefs that the mind has, and this is why the mind can easily be shaken up. So let me ask you a question. Did you grow up believing in Santa Claus? A little bit? Okay, I heard you.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're often taught, and I was taught this too, growing up, to believe in Santa Claus, right? And we believed in Santa Claus, and we thought Santa Claus, if you could turn your mic off, I think it's just a little bit scratchy there. We can maybe get another one that has a better connection, but yeah. So we grow up believing in Santa Claus, right? And people tell us that Santa Claus is true, and we start seeing these presents at our tree, perhaps when we're waking up, and it kind of reinforces the belief, right? And we believe this, and somewhere along the line, we find out that it's not true. It was for me, I was 8 years old. I was devastated, was really angry at my parents for lying at me for all that time. And it's not really a good way to start a life as a child that your parents are lying, even though they teach you to not lie, right? So I grew up with this belief, and then your mind gets shaken up because of this belief. But then ultimately you see the truth, and you see true reality, and you gain this wisdom that there's no such thing as Santa Claus. So now it doesn't matter how many big jolly guys you see in red clothes or long gray beards or Christmas carols that you hear on the radio. Nobody can ever convince you that Santa Claus is real, because you know the truth and your mind is unshakable. It's completely steady on this topic. Where when we were a child, it got shaken up and we found out that our belief was untrue. So the mind has certain beliefs that it has, and it can easily be shaken up because of those beliefs. That when you see things or hear things or experience things that are opposite of what your mind believes, it's easy for your mind to be shaken up. So one of the things that the unenlightened mind has is it believes that this world around you should be permanent. It believes that I want these things to be permanent. And now when you experience this impermanence in your life, because everything around you is impermanent, the mind gets shaken up by that. But when you can understand the truth and you can see the wisdom that there's this universal truth of impermanence, that everything around you is impermanent, now when you know the truth, your mind can't get shaken up any longer because you know the truth. It doesn't matter what anybody says to you. Same thing is true when it comes to things like understanding craving, desire, attachment is the cause of your discontentedness. In the unenlightened state, an individual will firmly believe that other people are causing you to be angry. But once you get the wisdom that your mind is causing its own anger, nobody will ever shake you off of that. Once you see it with true reality, your mind can be steady and unshakable. But because you've been exposed to so many beliefs growing up and even in your adult life, the mind is still holding on to that. We call it conditioning of the mind. And what you're doing on this path is you need to be willing to let that go. This is part of right intention. For those of you guys that study the Eightfold Path with me, as part of the Buddha's Eightfold Path, there's a second factor, which is called right intention, where he teaches you to have the intention of renunciation, the willingness to let go, the willingness to give up. There's other parts of it too, but this first part of right intention is the intention of renunciation, where your mind is willing to let go and give up its unwholesomeness and get rid of its false beliefs. So what you're doing on this path to enlightenment is you're clearing out all that conditioning that the mind has taken on throughout countless lives, including this life. And now you're getting to a purified mind where your mind is unconditioned. And now you can see true reality and you can understand everything around you, because to live in a world that you don't understand, it's a struggle and it's very difficult because the mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. But when you eliminate all the false beliefs, all the misperceptions, all the misunderstandings, and you get to this purified mind where you can see true reality of how things truly happen around you, now your mind can be stable and steady in all situations. But you can't get to that as long as those beliefs or that conditioning is in there, because you don't know what's true or false. And when you get to wisdom, you'll know what's true or false. You'll know with 100% certainty because you've seen the truth for yourself.
I think it's in my meditation occasionally, which is going quite well, I think. Occasionally I'll encounter this intense feeling of shame will come upon me. And the imagery is very random. Little would I attach the imagery to a shaming event or a guilty kind of thing. The reason I asked my first question, I suppose, is that a cue that I should be really looking into this? I try in my meditation to think, okay, let me come back to my breath. But I can't help ignore the fact that, yeah, it feels like some real odd childhood thing that I can't even articulate in a way. You know, I just can't help but think, I should be looking at that, you know.
Yeah, so in the meditation itself, you're doing what I would suggest and what I would advise, which is cut off and let go, because you need to train the mind to be able to let go. That's the whole reason why you're having those memories, is because the mind hasn't let go. It doesn't want to let go. That's what craving does. It then has not only craving where it longs and yearns, but it has clinging where it holds on. That's what it's holding on to, is all this conditioning. And what you're training the mind to do is let go. And that's how you purify the mind, is get the mind to let go. So in your meditation, you're doing what I would suggest, which is cut off and let go, cut off and let go, cut off and let go. But then afterwards, that's where you can peer into these kinds of things and try to see what is it that the mind's truly holding on to. What's the underlying craving and what's the underlying clinging? And where you have trouble to discover that, that's where you can reach out to a teacher and spend time talking in a personal conversation, and we'll be able to help you. We'll ask you questions to kind of walk you through what you're experiencing, and then you can uncover what it is that the mind's holding on to. And then in addition to meditation, there's oftentimes other things that you can do to go in and almost surgically remove these things out of the mind so that you can purify the mind. You will get to a point, if you all the way get to enlightenment, where you have memories of the things that you experienced in the past, but it doesn't plague your mind in the present moment. So for example, someone who gets to enlightenment, let's just say they were sexually abused in the past, where by the time they get to enlightenment, they will remember that they were sexually abused in the past, but it doesn't cause them any painful feelings in the present moment because their mind is let go of any clinging to that experience. Where in the unenlightened state, you can be thinking back to the experience you had at getting sexually abused, and now you can have painful feelings in the present moment based on things that happened to you in the past. And this is the mind's craving and clinging and holding on. So this sounds like the mind's clinging to some things, which is normal. That's what the unenlightened mind does. And in the meditation, cut it off and let it go, bring the mind back to the breath. But then you do need to look at that and see what is it that is the mind is holding on to, because there's certain ways to ensure that your mind can let that go. And then you might still remember that those things occurred, but they won't plague your mind. Having memories isn't a problem. The problem is that if you now experience discontent feelings in the present moment based on those memories. So as long as you're alive, you're going to have memories, you're going to have thoughts. That's not a problem. It's when you form feelings like conditioned pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant. That's what the problem is. So if you're just having thoughts in meditation and you're just having memories, no big deal, cut it off and let it go. But if you're getting that shame that you talk about, that's the problem that you would like to uncover. There's some craving there that is producing that shame. And if you can't figure out what the craving is, and there might be multiple, that's where you sit down with a teacher, you ask for help. Either after class you can come talk, or you can schedule an appointment and we can meet sometime either in Chiang Mai or online or whatever you would like to do. And then I'll just kind of get to know your life a bit, ask you some questions, and see if you can uncover what it is that the mind's holding on to, so that then you can almost surgically go in and release it, so that then when you release that craving, you won't experience that shame anymore. Okay, let's see if we have any questions online here.
Hi, David.
Oh,
actually, I have a question.
Oh, okay.
Just like, I think the concept of the animal realm and human realm is kind of abstract to me. Mm-hmm. And I'm just curious about, like, I heard that there are 6 realms of the whole. And like, I'm just curious about, is there any connection of like, if we are in the animal realm, like there are some hardships and sufferings that we may face. Is there any connection of what we did or what we have done during the human realm? Is there any connections, or like is there any specific things we should do during the animal realm to like be helpful to our rebirth? It's just kind of curious.
Yeah, great question. I'm about to introduce you guys to the realms, so let me introduce them to you and answer your question at the same time. So here, these are the 5 realms that the Buddha taught. He taught the hell realm, the animal realm, afflicted spirits, human realm, and heavenly realm. But you will see people that will tell you that the Buddha taught 6 realms or 9 realms or 32 realms. I've seen all kinds of numbers out there. But this is with the lack of wisdom of the original teachings of the Buddha. If you go back to his original source teachings, which the largest, most complete collection we have of his original teachings is what we call the Pali Canon. So if you go back to the Pali Canon, the original teachings, you can see he only taught 5 realms of existence. But because people have shared his teachings in an oral tradition for 2,500 years, it's very easy for an oral tradition to become tainted because people will change and modify what it is that they're sharing. But when you go back to the original text, you can see the 5 realms that he taught. So even though you might see other people teach 6 or 8 or 9 or 32 or however many number of realms, I can assure you that he only taught 5, and then you don't believe me, you can go back to the original teachings yourself and see that he taught the 5 realms. And then if you've ever had contact with beings in any of these 5 realms, which some of us have had, that's how you confirm the existence, that these exist. And the Buddha would have had memories and or contact with beings in all of these realms, and that's how he confirmed and he knew that these realms existed. And it's the same thing with me. I have memories from existence in some of these realms, and I've had contact with beings in some of these realms as well, or all of these realms. So I know that these are the 5 realms based on my own direct experience, and then also because it's in the original teachings of the Buddha, I confirmed it there too. And the experiences that I had were prior to ever seeing the teachings of the Buddha. So it's not like I read the teachings of the Buddha and now my mind was conditioned to believe these things. Instead, I had these experiences throughout my life, and then once I finally was exposed to the teachings of the Buddha, I was like, he's explaining exactly what I experienced throughout my life because I've experienced contact with beings in these various realms. So I'm going to go through these various realms and explain them to you. And if I don't answer your question that you asked, be sure to re-ask it or ask a follow-up if you have a follow-up. I'm going to explain to you each of these realms and what are experienced in each of these realms. But as I explain these realms, it's important to understand that these aren't in some far distant land. It's not like the heavenly realm is way up in the sky far away and the hell realm is deep down in the core of the earth. Just like a human being is sitting in this chair right now and I could get up and leave and go use the bathroom, there could be an animal that would come and sit in this chair, maybe a dog or a cat or a squirrel or an ant or a spider or something like that. The same thing is true about these beings from hell, the afflicted spirit realm, and the heavenly realm. We're all in the same time and space. We're all in the same plane. So this is why some people can see these beings and some people can have communication with these beings because they're all right here in the same time and space. This heavenly realm, these beings are formless beings. They don't have physical form. They experience only pleasant feelings, and they can cultivate their mind. They can cultivate their consciousness to get to enlightenment. They typically lack motivation, though, because they only experience pleasant feelings. They don't experience the painful feelings, nor the feelings that are painful nor pleasant. They tend to lack motivation because they're just experiencing happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. They don't have those painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, or stress or anxiety or things like this. So they tend to not have that built-in motivation that human beings have. So they tend to not get to enlightenment in the heavenly realm, and they're reborn into other realms. This heavenly realm is not permanent. It's not a permanent existence. If you're in the heavenly realm, you still need to get to enlightenment. And if you don't get to enlightenment, you're going to be reborn in one of the other realms. So you're not going to go to heaven and stay there permanently. You can see that yourself, that everything around you is impermanent. That's the universal truth. So it's not like this world is impermanent and now there's this permanent place called heaven. That's not true. You can see that the universal truth is that all these things are impermanent around us. So your mind might have been conditioned at some point to believe that heaven is permanent. But if you learn, you reflect, and you practice, you can see everything around you is impermanent. So you can know the truth that this heavenly realm is impermanent. Despite people trying to convince you that it was permanent, you can see that it's impermanent because everything around you is impermanent. So these beings still need to get to enlightenment, but oftentimes they don't. You can get to enlightenment from there, and some beings do get to enlightenment from there, but oftentimes they don't because of this complacency. Then there's this human realm, which you guys are very familiar with. You're familiar with this human realm because you're in a human existence right now. These beings experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. The pleasant feelings is that happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. The painful ones are the sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. And those neither painful nor pleasant are things like shyness, or displeasure, or uncomfortableness, or unsatisfactoriness. If you're sitting next to a person on public transportation and your body's touching their body, it's not pleasant, it's not painful, maybe it's neither painful nor pleasant. Maybe you feel a bit of dissatisfaction in that situation. Your mind's just kind of a little bit, you maybe just don't like it, right? So that's the pleasant, painful, neither painful nor pleasant. That's what human beings are experiencing, all three feelings. They can cultivate the consciousness to attain enlightenment, and they tend to have motivation to do so because human beings don't like those painful feelings, and they don't like the neither painful nor pleasant feelings. So they tend to have built-in motivation. You don't like that sadness. You don't like the anger, perhaps. You don't like the guilt or the shame or the fear or the stress or the anxiety, the disappointment, right? So you're interested to get to something better. So human beings tend to be interested to get to enlightenment. So this is like the ideal existence, even beyond a heavenly existence. Being in a human existence is ideal because you have built-in motivation. So human beings can get to enlightenment, and we can cultivate our consciousness to do so. And whether we do or not, it's up to us. It's a personal choice. That's our karma, the results of our decisions. Then there's this next realm, which is called afflicted spirits. Some people refer to this as ghosts or hungry ghosts. I refer to it as afflicted spirits. This is a formless realm where beings have been reborn down into this realm, and they experience painful feelings and feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. They're being reborn there because they have a certain amount of craving. Their mind is still holding on. This is why people say, like, there's a ghost haunting this house. The person might have lived in that house at some point. They might have owned the house at some point, and their mind's still holding on. They're still craving. They're still holding on to that. Or maybe there's certain human beings in the world that they were once human, and now they're holding on to those human beings, and they can't let go, and they get reborn into this afflicted spirit realm. Or they might be haunting a certain, or they call it haunting, but they're just existing in that area, is maybe a certain land or something of this nature. So these beings cannot cultivate their consciousness to get to enlightenment. They can, of course, improve their consciousness, but they just can't improve it enough to get to enlightenment. They have extensive amounts of craving, desire, attachment to people, places, and possessions. Then there's the animal realm, which you guys are probably also somewhat familiar with because you interact with animals at different times. They also experience all three feelings: pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. They cannot cultivate the mind enough to get to enlightenment. They can cultivate their mind, especially with human help. This is one of the reasons why there's more and more human beings coming into the human realm, is because as human beings are interacting with animals, they're getting more and more training to improve the condition of their mind. And as they're dying, they're being reborn up into the human realm, where without human interaction, animals wouldn't have the ability to train their mind as readily. With human intervention, they can train their mind. They can become more domesticated, more calm. They can learn skills. There's a rat in Cambodia that has been trained to sniff out landmines. And by sniffing out these landmines, it's found like 100 different landmines, and it's saved the life of many human beings and many animals as a result. This is loving kindness and compassion that rat now cultivated, but it was with the assistance of human beings, and human beings being involved, it was able to train this rat to do that. By itself, the rat wouldn't have been able to do that. It wouldn't have been able to train itself to do that because it doesn't have the capability to practice that level of loving kindness and compassion. But with human beings involved, it could. So animals do have the ability to cultivate their mind to a certain degree, but not enough to get to enlightenment. And that cultivation is typically incentivized more by human beings. But even wild animals out in the forest, if you have like a big pack of monkeys, for example, there's going to be certain monkeys in that pack that are more loving and more kind, and there's going to be others that are more hostile and more aggressive and more angry. And now, depending on the quality of their mind at death, is going to determine where they get reborn next. So even animals left to themselves, they do have some capability to be practicing a bit more of these teachings, but they don't have the ability to fully cultivate their mind in the same way that a human would or a heavenly being would. So they tend to have no motivation. They tend to operate on these basic survival instincts. Animals are usually killing, they're stealing, they're having sexual misconduct. This is what they're doing. And that's what they do. They play, they fight, they look for food, they're killing, they're stealing, they're having lots of different sex with lots of different partners. This is what an animal does based on the condition of its consciousness. Then there's the hell realm. These are also formless beings. They experience exclusively painful feelings. They don't experience any pleasant feelings at all, and they don't experience the neither painful nor pleasant either. It's only the painful feelings. They can't cultivate their consciousness to attain enlightenment, but they can extinguish a significant amount of unwholesome karma. That's the reason why beings go there, is because, for example, if somebody was a serial murderer or killer in this life, and they get to the end of this life and their mind still has that anger and hatred, it's the hell realm where they can go to extinguish some of that and ultimately make their way through these other realms, ultimately potentially getting back to a human birth at some point. Even the hell realm is not a permanent existence. It's not permanent. You can see everything around you is impermanent. Eventually, those hell beings will find their way up into animal or afflicted spirit or the human realm, or maybe even the heavenly realm. So they have extensive amounts of craving, anger, and ignorance, or unknowing of true reality, these three poisons, and they're experiencing exclusively painful feelings in that hell realm. So all of these realms, beings are moving in and out of them. It's the human realm that is the ideal realm, because this is where we can cultivate our mind, we have the motivation, we have the ability to actually get to enlightenment here. Do you guys have any questions on any of the 5 realms? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So let me explain to you how observing past lives works and how observing just your current life works, because this may or may not occur for you at some point in your journey to enlightenment. If you've learned the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path with me and meditation training and some of these other teachings, and you're starting to practice those, there can be the potential that you'll have either contact with beings in one of these 5 realms, or at some point you may end up experiencing your past lives where you have memories of your past lives. If this is occurring, there's no need to be shaken up by it, either communication with other beings or seeing your past lives. But let me explain to you how this is working and why it's happening. When an individual is in existence, think of it like a cardboard box. You have cardboard box A, and then that cardboard box has a certain shape, a certain color, a certain texture. And then there's certain contents that are in this cardboard box. There's craving and certain memories that are in this cardboard box. This cardboard box is not permanent. It's going to dissolve. It's going to eliminate at some point. And when it does, the contents of that cardboard box, if there's still contents, if there's still cravings in those residual memories, then that craving is going to produce another cardboard box. And now we have cardboard box B. And this cardboard box B is a completely different color, a completely different texture and shape, and all kinds of other different size and everything. But the contents of cardboard box A have moved into cardboard box B. So while people call this the cycle of rebirth, there's nothing that's actually being reborn. The better way to refer to it would be the cycle of new existence. The word that's in the original Pali Canon that the Buddha used as it's documented is samsara. This word samsara is typically translated as the cycle of rebirth, but when you see how the Buddha explains this, there's nothing that's actually being reborn. So a better way to think about it is the cycle of new existence, because it's a completely new cardboard box every single time. It's just the contents of the cardboard box have moved from one cardboard box to the other. So it's a completely new cardboard box. At the end of cardboard box A, if there's craving in the mind, that's the fuel that causes the creation of this next new cardboard box, as we were talking about with the fire. So if Bob is alive and Bob has certain cravings and residual memories, and he gets to death, because of having craving in the mind, it's going to send a spark that now creates a new mind, which might be Susie or Barbara or Rebecca or somebody else, right? And now Rebecca has the cravings and residual memories in her mind from Bob, but it's a completely new being. It's a completely new body. It's a completely new mind. It just has the contents that have come into this new mind. Well, now when either Bob or Barbara or Susie goes outside, it's like they can only remember perhaps their current life when they're in the unenlightened state. When there's pollution in the mind is not performing optimally. It's like the mind is being burdened and there's certain pollution in the mind. When you go out of your house and you're at a certain street, you're at the street in front of your house, you can only look left and right and you can only see what's going on that street because you've just walked outside your house and that's all you see is one street. But if you live near a mountain and you went up on top of a mountain and you overlooked your town, not only could you see your street, but you could see all the other streets in the town, how they interconnect with your street. And you might even be able to see other towns, how those other towns interconnect into your town, because you've moved to this higher vantage point where you can overlook this town. And now you can see all these interconnecting streets in this interconnecting town. Well, when you have pollution in your mind, you can only go out on your street and you can only see your street because your mind is burdened with just being here on this street. But when you start lifting out the pollution out of your mind, you move to what's called a higher consciousness. The mind is now performing at a higher consciousness. It is no longer burdened with all this pollution of the mind. You're not being trapped down here on just the local street, but your mind's moved up to this higher consciousness, like moving on to a higher vantage point, and now you're overlooking this town. And now when you're overlooking the mind from this higher consciousness, you will understand more about this life that you're currently in. You will be able to look back over your life with this new wisdom and this higher consciousness, and you'll be able to see all the mistakes that you made and how you made those unwise decisions that led to unwholesome results. And you'll be able to see the wholesome decisions or the wise decisions that you made that led to wholesome results because you're at a higher vantage point. You've got more wisdom. You have more clarity in your mind. There's less pollution there. And the same thing is true that when you move to this higher vantage point or this higher consciousness, you can overlook your, not only this life, but you can oftentimes see your previous lives too because of these residual memories that have come from one existence and now are in this new mind. So you might start experiencing residual memories from your past lives. If this happens, there's nothing to be shaken up about. There's nothing to worry about. It's completely normal. You can just continue to keep your mind rooted in the present moment and just move forward in your day-to-day life. Oftentimes when people are experiencing communication with other beings or they're having memories of their previous lives, it can shake them up. But you should treat this just like if you were at a restaurant and you were sitting at a table and you heard other human beings talking in the restaurant. You wouldn't pay it any attention and you would just keep on going in your conversation in the restaurant. But because people don't understand the cycle of rebirth and they don't understand the 5 realms of existence and that you have previous lives, when these things are coming to their mind, they're oftentimes shaken up by it. They don't know how to ignore it from their mind. So just like you're in a restaurant and you overhear a conversation and you can ignore that, the same thing is true when you start hearing maybe heavenly beings or hell beings or afflicted spirit beings. You can ignore that if that's what you would choose to do, particularly the beings in hell and afflicted spirits. It's really wise to ignore that. Where heavenly beings are oftentimes trying to help you to progress in your life, you might pay attention to that and listen to what's going on. But this is how it's occurring, is that as you're practicing the Eightfold Path, which is the core central teaching of the Buddha, and you're lifting that pollution out of your mind, you start noticing that there's more clarity in the mind because you're moving to this higher consciousness consciousness, just like moving to a higher vantage point, and you can see more of your current life and more of how all your other lives potentially come in and feed into this life. If you actually observe your past lives, it is interesting because it helps you to confirm the cycle of rebirth, and you'll know that it's true. But there's other ways to confirm that it's true besides just observing your past lives. It can also help you understand certain cravings that you have in this life and why you have those cravings, and that can be an interesting thing for you. But for the most part, it doesn't really provide you any benefit or any value other than those two things, that you can see the cravings that are coming from your previous life, and that's why you're craving that thing now. And it can help you confirm the cycle of rebirth. But the fact is that in the present moment, your mind has having craving, your mind is discontent, and you need to extinguish it regardless. Whether it was a craving from this life or was a craving from a previous life, it doesn't really matter. You still need to eliminate it in order to get to peacefulness and to joy. And the cycle of rebirth can be confirmed other ways besides seeing and observing your past lives. So not everybody who gets to enlightenment is going to observe their past lives, and it's not required for you to see those in order to get to enlightenment. You can accomplish the goals of getting to enlightenment without having seen your past lives. But this is how it occurs. Do you guys have any questions on this? No questions? Okay. Did I answer your questions? Or do you have something else you would like to ask?
Actually, I'm just like, is there any like different realms have different functions? Like
different what?
Different realms have different function. Like you need to learn something from different realms. Like if like you're in animal realms, maybe you will face the difficulties when you're trying to survive in a wildlife. Maybe you have to learn something. I just like, if there are any functions, like you should learn from different realms. And also another is that, is there any orders that we finish the human realm? What's the next? Like, I just want to know, is there any orders? It just like you finish the human realm, you go to an animal or like hell or something.
I see. You're asking me, is there any order?
Yeah.
Sequential order.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. Beings can be reborn in and out of these realms in any particular way. Like, you know, an individual could start in the human or in the animal realm for existence, be reborn there countless times. They could come up to a human realm, and then they could go back to the animal realm. They could go down into the hell realm. They could go up into the heavenly realm. Beings are going in and out of these realms. But once you get to the human realm, as I mentioned, this is the ideal existence where now you can really make significant progress in cultivating your wisdom and getting to enlightenment. But there's no sequential order that everybody follows in terms of these realms. That would be permanence if that was the case. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. All right, I would like to just check. I'm not seeing any other questions here. Okay, so I've got a few other things here to share with you guys, just to help you guys see this connection between the animal realm and the human realm, and beings being reborn out of the animal realm into the human. You had a mic in your hand. Are you interested in asking a question? Okay. I didn't see you with the mic. It matches the same color as your shirt.
Yeah, my question is, I understand how humans and animals die and birth, but the other realms, how do they get birthed and died?
Yeah, they have a certain lifespan based on their existence in that realm. So because they're formless beings, like we can't kill them, for example. Like we could kill a animal, we could kill a human, but a hell being, we can't kill them. They just have a certain lifespan of, say 200 years or 500 years or however long they're going to be there. Same thing with afflicted spirit in the heavenly realm. The beings in the heavenly realm tend to have a very long lifespan. It's like almost like a minimum of like 500 years and beyond is how long your lifespan is in the heavenly realm. And same thing in the hell realm. It's an enormous amount of time frame in those existences. And afflicted spirits live for a significant period of time as well, but it's just kind of like a set time frame, and then they basically expire at the end of that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so now I'm going to share with you guys this connection that you can start seeing between the animal realm and the human realm. And you can see how the unenlightened human mind functions very much like an animal. So you can start identifying these animalistic characteristics that happen in the unenlightened human mind so that you can start shedding those and then start making wiser and wiser decisions, become a better and better human being, because that's what you're doing. Getting to this enlightened mental state, you're functioning more and more like a human being and shedding these animalistic instincts. So as I've shared, the vast majority of rebirths into the human realm occur out of the animal realm. And this is why we see certain things in the human realm that are very animalistic. Things like serial murderers, right? Someone's born into the human realm. They were maybe a lion previously, where they were constantly killing, or maybe they were a snake where they were constantly killing, or some kind of spider that was constantly killing. And now when they're in the human realm, they're continuing to kill, right? Their mind is functioning very much like a animal. Even though they're in the human realm, their mind was conditioned in that way. So now, even though they're in the human realm, their mind is still killing. This is where you can see people that will eat another human being. They will kill and eat another human being, because some animals in the animal realm do that same thing. And if an animal has been doing that for an extensive period of time, for multiple lives, just because that mind was reborn into a human existence, the cravings and residual memories from those animal existences are in this new mind as a human. And now, even though they're a human, they're functioning very much like these animals that have been continuously killing. And their mind just hasn't woken up to the wisdom that this is unwise, that their mind's continuing to hold on to the cravings and residual memories from their past lives. And you can see a lot of other things like that as well. The unenlightened human mind functions very much like an animal's mind. The unenlightened mind, as well as the animal mind, typically has a lack of memory. It also functions on a praise and reward system. If you look at animals, the way we train them is we try to train them to do some certain behavior. And then when they do that behavior, we give them a reward. And now they're going to repeat that behavior over and over. Well, human beings function that way to a large extent as well. When we do something, like say we go to school, we get an award, we get a certificate, and now we really like that. And then we want another certificate and another certificate and another certificate. Or if somebody gives you praise, you might really like that, and it might encourage you to do that same behavior over and over and over again. So when you have a boss and your boss praises you or acknowledges you for some particular type of performance or some activity or behavior that you've done, you're going to have a tendency to do that behavior over and over and over again, just like an animal. Just like animals learn from a pack of their like species, like wolves learn how to be wolves from other wolves, elephants learn how to be elephants from other elephants, humans learn how to be humans from other humans. And depending on what family you've grown up in and what environment you've grown up in, if you grew up in a hostile environment, you might have learned to be somewhat hostile and aggressive. Where if you've grown up in more of a loving and a more nurturing environment, that's how your mind was conditioned to be more loving and more kind and more polite, more respectful, perhaps. So you're going to learn from the like species around you. And this is one of the reasons why the Buddha teaches to cultivate wholesome relationships in our life. That if we cultivate wholesome relationships, then we're going to tend to, do those same types of things that our wholesome friends are involved in. But then likewise, if we cultivate unwholesome relationships, we're going to tend to do those things as well, because we're learning from our pack of species, our same species. There's certain instinctive behaviors that we have in terms of like eating and urinating and things like this. And then there's certain learned behaviors. And it's our learned behaviors that are coming from this similar pack of species. So the mind can be conditioned by growing up in a certain population of people or in a certain group to function in that way. So if you grew up in an angry, hostile, and bitter environment, then your mind's going to be conditioned that way to function in that way. You might think that if you don't get what you want, you should yell and scream and holler at people and fear them into giving you what you want. Just like a lion learns to roar. Like when a lion cub comes out, they don't have that roaring. They don't have that aggression and hostility. That little lion cub learns from other lions how to be aggressive and hostile and bitter and how to hunt and do all those kinds of things. And a human being is the same way. When we're born, we don't have anger and hostility in our mind. We don't go into the nursery at the hospital hating other babies. We just don't do that. We learn hate as we grow up. Our mind gets conditioned that way, and we take on that pollution. But we can eliminate all of that from the mind, right? So there's this light learning from our similar pack of species. And then we have these certain phrases in the human realm that we say things like, you're acting like an animal. Right? When somebody's doing something that we think is unwise, you might say, you're acting like an animal. Or you might say, you're fighting like cats and dogs. Essentially, what we're doing is we're referring to those experiences that we had in the animal realm, and we know how animals function, and we're referring to human beings as, you are acting like an animal, or you're acting like you're fighting like a cat or a dog, right? And this is how we refer to it, because that unenlightened mind that is being argumentative or hostile or bitter, it's fighting like a cat or a dog. That's what an animal does. And you being a human, you are functioning like an animal. That's what we say. We have these different phrases that we use. Humans are fascinated with animals. We do all kinds of things with animals. We have stuffed animals when we're growing up as children. We typically have stuffed animals. We will typically wear animal prints, even if it's not the skin of the animal itself, which some people wear the skin or the fur of an actual animal on their own body. We will sometimes just wear a print, like a fabric that is made to look like an animal. And we might like and enjoy wearing that particular animal print. We go to zoos. Right? We have zoos, we create zoos, then we go to zoos and we gawk at animals and we look at animals. We go to safaris, we look at animals. We even have animals in our home now, right? We sleep with animals in our own bed, because human beings have been animals so many countless times. We have this close connection to the animal realm, and the mind is holding on to those animal existences to the point where we have animals in our home and even sleeping with animals. So humans have this fascination with animals. There's this animal consciousness from our animal existences that is preoccupied with this craving, anger, and ignorance, this ego, and this protection of a self. The unenlightened consciousness of the human mind is functioning like an animal and almost seeing ourselves as an animal, sleeping with animals, laying with animals, training animals, going to see animals in zoos, using animals for work, using animals for food and subsistence, using animals for clothes, having stuffed animals, having toys that are animals. It's just animals, 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 because we're so fascinated with animal existences because of our connection to the animal realm. But what's important is that we learn that we are now humans. We are no longer animals. We're on this path to enlightenment. We're interested in becoming better and better human beings through understanding that we are not animals anymore. We are human beings, and we need to shed those animalistic instincts where animals will kill, they will steal, they will have sexual misconduct. We can evolve beyond that. We can evolve where we don't kill. We don't kill anything. We don't need to kill anything unless, as you guys have learned with me through the 5 precepts, there are certain situations where maybe you need to defend this being or things like this. There are some rare situations where we might need to kill, but we're not doing it because of our anger, our hatred, our ill will. We're not intending to kill. We're only potentially killing in a situation where we're defending this physical body, or some other rare situation that I've talked about when we talk about the 5 precepts. We can eliminate killing from our life. We can eliminate stealing. We don't need to steal from other people. We can go out and earn these things ourselves. But as an animal, we will steal. But as a human being, we don't need to steal. We don't need to have sexual misconduct. We can have just one loyal, loving, consenting partner, have that relationship. If you'd like to have sex, you can do that. You can train your mind to do that. Just be with one partner. And then if that relationship's over and you would like to have another partner, then you can have another partner. But when you have multiple partners, then you're going to open yourself up to being injured or killed or having sexually transmitted diseases or all kinds of other problems. So this human existence, you can evolve from this animal consciousness to becoming more and more human, experiencing a better and better existence because you've got more wisdom about the natural laws around us. Those animals, they're having a very tough time in those animal existences. Living out there in the forest is not easy. It's a very hard life. There's animals and predators that are constantly chasing and killing each other, and they need to always be on guard. They can't just relax and be at ease. But here in the human realm, we can relax, we can be comfortable, we can be at ease, we can be peaceful, and we can be joyful if we evolve out of our animal consciousness to becoming more and more human. By getting to enlightenment, we end the cycle of rebirth through learning to become more and more human and experiencing this better existence where we can peacefully coexist with other human beings. The condition of the planet is due to the human mind, that when we see the environment around us that is really struggling, and we see rivers and streams that are polluted, and we see the air is polluted, and we see all these different difficulties throughout the world, whether it's war or famine or rapes or murders or all the different things that we see in the world, this is all coming from the mind of human beings. Because of craving, because of anger, because of ignorance, human beings are making unwise decisions. And as long as we're making those unwise decisions, we'll keep experiencing calamity in the world. And where this is coming from is the animal mind. Now, an animal out in the forest, they're doing what they need to be doing, and the forest has a way of decomposing, and they need that in order to keep the cycle going within the animal realm. But in the human world, us killing, it causes harm to other beings in such a way that affects our environment. By us stealing, by us having sexual misconduct, it affects the health of the human population. So we can eliminate our craving, anger, and ignorance from the human mind, get to a point where the mind is wise, making wise decisions and experiencing wholesome results. But as long as we make decisions through craving, which is our own selfish desires, as long as we make decisions through our anger, which is the hostility and bitterness, and as long as we make decisions through our ignorance or unknowing a true reality, it will produce unwholesome results in our own personal life and also in the world at large. So by purifying the mind and practicing generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, and now by making decisions through generosity, where we're giving and sharing with others, and we're making decisions through loving kindness, which is this genuine interest in seeing others be well, and making decisions through wisdom, wise decision making, now we can experience wholesome results in the world around us. And as you gradually bring down your pollutions and gradually bring up those wholesome qualities, you'll see more and more improvement to the condition of your mind in your life as well. And as a collective humanity, our species can evolve. Just like a lizard or any other being evolves their species and it continues to evolve, human beings can evolve beyond anger, beyond frustration, beyond hostility and bitterness. We can evolve to the point where human beings no longer experience anger and frustration and agitation and bitterness and all these other things that we experience. Our species needs to continue to evolve in order to survive. We need to gain more and more wisdom in order to survive. We have been evolving ever since human beings were on the planet. We've been continually evolving our speech, our sight, our brains, our hearing, our ability to communicate with each other. We've been continually evolving, but there's this one area that we haven't evolved fully yet, which is our human mind, that it still is polluted with craving, anger, and ignorance based on our conditioning from our previous animal existences. And what a Buddha is doing is helping you to be able to see that, so that then when you identify how you're being an animal in your personal life, maybe with your life partner or your children, maybe you're growling and you're roaring when your children don't do what you want, or your parents don't do what you want, or your co-workers aren't doing what you want. You might growl and roar at them and try to fear them into doing what you want. You need to see that as an animalistic instinct and purge that from your life. Where you see you're putting up boundaries and borders, and if anybody comes into your territory, you get angry and frustrated, much like a lion goes around and marks its territory with its urine and its feces and the scent of its paws. It goes around and marks its territory. And if any other lion comes into this area, it's going to growl and roar. Human beings often do this with our property as well. We put borders up, and if somebody comes into our property, you might get angry and hostile and bitter with that person. If you have a certain amount of food, you might not be interested in sharing it. Much like an animal, you might hoard your food, or you might hoard your clothing or your other resources like your money. You might hold on to it and try to collect it up like an animal. Like a squirrel will collect up its acorns and put it in a tree somewhere and hold on to it, and it won't share it with other squirrels, and it'll get angry if another squirrel tries to get its acorns. But here in the human realm, we can see that hoarding as part of our animalistic instincts, and we can choose to not hoard and hold on to things with craving. We can choose to live open-handedly and share with other beings. So we can see these animalistic instincts, not only these that I've described so far, but things like sexual misconduct. We can see that as part of our animalistic behaviors and how it led to unwholesome results in our life. And now we can choose to have a loyal, loving, consenting relationship with one partner and see that as wise and helpful, and then have a very wonderful relationship with that person. So we can evolve beyond this hostility and this aggression and this anger and this bitterness, evolve as an individual. But then as you cultivate that wisdom and other people are interested in understanding how you did it, you can share it with other people. And then as a collective society, we can all evolve as an entire population of people. And now the evolution of our species, we can eradicate anger from our population. We can eradicate the hostility and the bitterness, getting to a point where human beings can live harmoniously with all others. Some people might refer to this as heaven on earth if that we got to that point. But we don't need to go around and get 8 billion people to agree to this. You can just decide for yourself that you would like to evolve this species that you are, this being that you are, that you would like to evolve, and now on the path to enlightenment, gaining more and more wisdom, becoming this better and better human being, and shedding these animalistic instincts. So I'll end here and see what questions you guys might have. This is everything that I was going to share with you guys. If you have any questions, just let me know here at the temple. If you could use one of the microphones, and online, if you could put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically and ask any questions that you like. Yes, Samantha.
So you said that there was no order to the different realms that we're reborn into. Is there any correlation between say your Gama and what you've done in a certain realm as to which one you will then be reborn into? So say as an animal, if you were a caterpillar and didn't have much anger and, didn't maybe hurt too many beings, would you be more likely to be reborn into the heavenly realm or the human realm? And if yes, when you came into the human realm, would your Gama perhaps have you reborn into, I'll say, an easier existence versus one that would be more difficult?
The answer to all of that is yes. You're seeing that perfectly clear. It's craving, desire, attachment that determines whether there is rebirth or not. But then it's your Gama, the results of your decisions, that determines which realm and what condition within that realm. And your Gama is determined based on the condition of your mind, because whatever decisions you've made throughout your life is going to determine how much craving, anger, and ignorance you have in your mind at the time of death. So it's not like there's some being sitting somewhere looking over the totality of your life and then judging you based on what you've done in your life to determine which realm you're born into. Instead, this is just an automatic process that is occurring all the time based on these natural laws. So it's the cause and condition at the time of death is if there's craving in the mind, that's the switch. Okay, there's going to be rebirth. And now that there's rebirth, okay, what is the quality of these various unwholesome roots, or these craving, anger, and ignorance? What is the amount of that that's in the mind? And now that's going to determine which realm and what the condition is once you're reborn into that realm.
So if in the human realm you're working towards enlightenment and you maybe don't attain it but get further along than when you were born, are you more likely then to be reborn as a human to be able to try to continue that cycle, or say into the heavenly realm versus the hell realm?
Yes. The answer is yes. So if you get to the first stage of enlightenment, which is what I taught last week in the retreat about how to get to the first stage of enlightenment, and everything that I teach is helping you to either get to the first stage or beyond, even get to enlightenment, is if you get to the first stage of enlightenment, you won't ever be reborn into the lower realms from that point forward. You'll only ever come back to the human realm, to the heavenly realm, or you'll actually get to enlightenment itself. But you can also get to back into the human realm, and you can even get to the heavenly realm in other ways too. You don't have to be in the first stage of enlightenment in order to be reborn into the human realm. You can actually be not even on this path, right? You can be having various qualities of mind and still get reborn into the human realm. So it's not like there's just one path to get back to the human realm, or there's just one path to get to the heavenly realm. There's beings who have never seen these teachings ever, because the natural laws of existence are functioning and affecting you regardless. So it's based on the quality and the condition of your mind. So even people who are off the path to enlightenment and have never seen these teachings can still be coming back into the human realm or the heavenly realm or any of those lower realms too. You're welcome. And we had a question earlier. I think you asked me about what happens once you get to enlightenment and die. Didn't you ask me that question? Yeah, I think I heard you ask a question in there about, if you're not reborn into one of the 5 realms, if you're enlightened and you die, what happens to you? Did you ask that question?
Yes, and I also asked, like, is there any functions of different realms? Like, is there anything, any function, like in specific, like if you are in an animal realm, what should you learn from this?
Oh, I see. Okay, so it isn't so specific that, okay, if you're in the animal realm, there's something for you to learn from that. But of course, every being is actually learning as they're in any particular existence, but it's not as specific as what you might be asking there. But in terms of once if you don't get to enlightenment, if there's craving in your mind at the time of death, you will be reborn in one of these 5 realms. And we've been experiencing that countless times up to this point. So that's why the Buddha doesn't use rebirth in these realms as a way to guilt, shame, or fear you into learning his teachings, that he never does that whatsoever. You've already been reborn countless times. If you need to be reborn 20 more times, okay, so be it. I think it's unwise, but if that's what happens, then what's happened. We're not going to use guilt, shame, or fear to try to convince you to learn these teachings, because that's what you're eliminating is guilt, shame, and fear. We wouldn't use guilt, shame, and fear to try to motivate you to eliminate guilt, shame, and fear. We're just explaining to you what's happening. So if you don't get to enlightenment, you will be reborn in one of these realms, and that's another opportunity for you to learn, another opportunity for you to grow. But depending on what your life has been in this life, you might be like, I'm not interested in coming back to this world again. Let me get out of here. Let me just escape this whole place. Why come back here? No interest in coming back here. So if you feel that way, great, use that motivation. And while there's certainly wonderful things about life, and we all enjoy life to a certain degree, by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll be enjoying every aspect of life. There's nothing about enlightenment that is unenjoyable. Your life will be at ease, you'll be peaceful, everything will be wonderful in your entire life by the time you get to enlightenment. But up until that point, there's certain things that are quite miserable about life, and there's certain things that you probably enjoy about life. But nonetheless, you wouldn't be interested in coming back and experiencing all that misery and despair ever again. So this is the escape. This is the way to escape that. And you'll know that you're doing that because in this life, your mind is becoming more and more peaceful, more and more joyful. So you know that you're headed in the right direction. And eventually, when you get to enlightenment, it will be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Your life will be peaceful. It'll be joyful. You're not arguing with anybody. Nobody's arguing with you. You don't have any hostility. You don't have any bitterness. You're not agitated or annoyed. You don't even have the slightest displeasure in the mind. So once you get to enlightenment, and then there's death, the Buddha doesn't describe what comes next. He leaves it as an undeclared teaching. And I suspect that he does this intentionally for various reasons. And if you guys would like to know those reasons, you can ask me and I'll let you know what I think is the reason why he left it as an undeclared teaching. But there's a certain teaching where he says, remember, monks, this is what I taught. I taught discontentedness. I taught the cause of discontentedness. I taught the elimination of discontentedness. And I taught the path that leads to the elimination of discontentedness. And then he says, remember what I did not teach. I did not teach these things. And he lists out 10 things that he doesn't teach. And he leaves it as an undeclared teaching. And one of the things that he left as undeclared is, once you attain enlightenment, what happens next after this life? And like I said, I suspect there's very specific reasons why he did that, and very wisely chose not to explain what's next, if anything at all. He didn't say there is something next, but he didn't say there isn't something next either. He just left it as an undeclared teaching.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Let me see if we have any questions here. No more questions here at the temple? No? Okay. So what I'll do then is just thank all of you guys for joining for today's class. And I appreciate you coming to learn and ask questions and be interested to understand the path to enlightenment, because this is helping you to become more and more peaceful, more and more joyful. It's going to help you in your life. You, and not only you, but the people around you, your relationships with your parents, your family, your life partner, your co-workers, all the people that you're around, that you interact with, you're going to be causing less and less harm to other beings. And as a result, all of humanity is going to become a more and more peaceful place as there's more and more people getting to enlightenment. So it's helping you, it's helping those close to you, and it's helping all of humanity. The very best thing you could ever do for yourself and for the world is to get to enlightenment. Because if you get to enlightenment, you're going to be causing less and less harm in the world. And you're going to be experiencing a more and more wonderful life every time. So you're always welcome to come here. We have classes on Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturday. And when you're not here in Chiang Mai, I live stream these classes as well at 9 a.m. in the morning, Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturday. And then I also teach those same classes at 9 p.m. on Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturday from my house. And I live stream those as well. So no matter what time zone you're in, there should be a live class around those times. And then we have courses and retreats at different times through the month that you're always welcome to attend. Those are listed over on the bulletin board here, but you'll see the most comprehensive list of them from our website. If you go to buddhadailywisdom.com, you can get books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, classes, courses, retreats, personal guidance. All this help is available for you at no cost. So if there's something that you would like to receive in terms of help or guidance on the path to enlightenment, you can just reach out to me and I'm here to help you guys. So thank you all for joining, and perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class. Have a wonderful and lovely rest of your day. Sawadee krap, sawadee krap, sawadee krap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.